Hello again, Calm 302 and YouTube. We're continuing with our question and answer about touch in romantic relationships here. Next question. Do you think public affection can make you look negatively? And here I'm taking make you look negatively as meaning make you look asinine to the people around you. And yes, it definitely can. Public displays of affection generally serve two purposes, as I kind of touched on in one of the earlier videos here. Firstly, to make the partners feel more secure in their relationship and in their physical environment by signaling to each other that they've got each other's backs. And also, it serves to signal to everyone around them that they are a couple and, again, should be treated and addressed and interacted with as such. And generally, touching, hugging, holding hands, light cuddling or kissing and the like are considered acceptable and benign by most reasonable people, and they usually aren't bothersome. Um, However, excessive passionate touch will likely make the surrounding people a little bit uncomfortable and is usually considered as inappropriate and frowned upon. So just be careful what you do. Next question. What can public touching display to people seeing it? Well, I kind of just touched on this, but to repeat what I said, one of the primary purposes of public affection is to signal to the surrounding people that the two partners are a couple. Um, if the level of touch becomes excessive or inappropriate, it will usually give the impression that the two partners have no self-control or awareness. But at its base level, it's meant to signal to everybody around you that, me and this other person are in a relationship and we're together, and therefore, please respect that and just respect that we are one unit for the purposes of being in this environment and interacting with. If somebody is unaware of cultural touch norms in another country, what should they do to display affection? Well, firstly, I just want to reiterate that I am not a doctor, whatever my description says in my videos, but kind of based off of my own ideas about it and a little bit of research I did. And actually, firstly, I would say that Google would be a good tool to make use of. Do a little bit of research about wherever you're going. Um, In general, however, I think in most cases it is better to err on the side of caution and be more reined in with your affection, at least until you establish a baseline for affection in that country. It would be better to go to Italy and initially be seen as shy for not being overly touchy than it would be to go to Japan and be seen as hostile or insensitive for trying to hug a stranger, or at least in my mind it would be. So I will say that a smile is pretty much universal for friendly intent. So I would start with that and just pay attention to how everybody else acts. Again, kind of leading towards less touch and less display of emotion until you're kind of sure of where you stand and how everybody else kind of tends to generally interact with each other. Does one gender prefer to touch or be touched more than the other gender, or is it based on the individual? Individual preferences vary, and cultural norms will also affect this to a great degree. But in general, both men and women tend to be more hesitant to touch and be touched by men, and less hesitant to touch and be touched by women, with women generally being more touchy-feely in general than men. Does touching a stranger when you think it's okay, but the other individual believes it to be inappropriate, lead back to the family household and how you were raised? It may, to an extent. People who are raised in a family that is very fond of touching will probably be more likely to touch someone they just met than will a person who grew up in a family that did not touch much. Interaction with friends and people in general during early years will also affect how a person perceives touch. In the end, it's really a personal preference, however, and it's more important for a person to be aware of how their touch is being received than it is to have a preference to touch or not to touch. How do you think touching has been affecting sexual encounters? For example, college students tend to have NSA sex. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but basically they're trying to say here that college students tend to, kind of be caught up in the idea of sex without love. Well, touching has always been a major part of sexual interaction, and I don't think it's really been affecting sexual encounters so much as that our society is more accepting and encouraging of sexual encounters. And so sexual interaction and therefore sexual touch has become more visible as a result. So it's not really the touch affecting the circumstances, It's the circumstances that are affecting the touch. Personal question, what is your favorite type of touch? Personally, I like a good foot rub. I would likely not request one or accept one from somebody who was not my current romantic partner, but I do find it to be a very pleasant form of caregiving touch to receive from my partner. Um, Another personal question here. Have you ever felt awkward or had an awkward situation when somebody touched you? Awkward hug, etc. Yes, I have. And I think most of us have at one point or another. Personally, it took me a little longer than most to realize that girls tend to randomly touch people they are attracted to. And so I used to find it a little odd when a girl I knew in high school would touch my arm for no apparent reason as we were talking. But then one day the light bulb went off and it became flirtatious and intriguing rather than awkward. And then, actually, this is the last question that we're going to cover here. What was the most interesting thing you found out when researching your topic? The most interesting thing I found while doing research actually wasn't related specifically to romance. In one of the sources I was using for my presentation, the author went into detail about studies that had found that a touch makes it far more likely to get what you want from another person. One of the examples they gave was that research indicated that a sympathetic touch from a doctor leaves people with the impression that the visit lasted twice as long as compared with estimates from the people who were touched. So, if the doctor goes in and actually touches the person he's talking to, that person will feel like they received a much longer and more personal visit to the doctor than will somebody who was not physically touched by the doctor. And again, that's most likely going to be either a handshake or something like that, or some kind of general interactive touch. And there were some other examples they gave as well, including like the likelihood of I think one of the examples was like getting change back, like getting the right amount of change back from somebody when when you pay for something. But generally, they were talking about how if you actually touch somebody and make physical contact, it tends to create an emotional connection with the person, even if it's just a simple little touch like a handshake or something with, or not even a handshake, just like a touch on the back or the shoulder with somebody who you literally just met. Statistically, I guess it makes it more likely for the interaction to go positively and for you to get whatever you're trying to get from them, or trying to help or not help, but trying to make them see or be in agreement with or whatever. And I thought this was both an interesting thing to learn and a useful thing to remember when communicating in the future. So I kind of just logged that away, and I plan to use that in the future. And that does wrap up what we're doing here today. I'd like to thank any of you who watched this video and took the time to listen to the presentation that I've created here. Again, I am not a doctor. Don't listen to anything I said as something with authority because I am not licensed, I am not a professional, and all this is simply based on research I did for a paper and a presentation. Um, and with that, I think I'm going to conclude things here. Again, thank you all for watching, and I look forward to possibly doing this again sometime.